to start. And of course, good afternoon and good evening to all the participants that are following us online. And we're very happy that you graced this first ever Youth Side Event. Youth participation in national implementation plans and strategies to the Stockholm Convention. My name is Joe Bonge, and I'm the co-moderator, and of course I'll be supported by my colleague here, Julia, who works with SIL. Of course, she will introduce herself, and of course will introduce also the speakers we have here. I'm basically from the Gambia, and I work with Young Volunteers for the Environment in the Gambia, and of course the co-initiator as well for the IPEN Youth Caucus. So it's a great opportunity and honor for me, and as well as to welcome you once again. This side event actually came at a time when the world grapples with ways in which they can balance meeting the demands of an increasing population with environmental and natural resource protection. Today, as we all witness, there are 1.2 billion young people aged 15 and 24 to 24 years, accounting for 16% of the global population. And it's estimated by 2030 that the number of youth is projected to have grown by 7% to nearly 1.3 billion. Despite this number, the participation of youth in socio-economic, socio-political discourse on the continent is limited. Thus, greater proportion of youth also do not have the opportunity to fully develop its potential and contribute effectively to the development agenda on the continent. The challenges, of course, of chemicals and waste are not an exception. Hence, meaningful youth engagement around chemicals and waste is an important but often neglected by global leaders. There is no one-size-fits-all method for inclusive youth engagement. However, ladies and gentlemen, some frameworks and the HATS learned examples help guide discourse around meaningful youth engagement. So basically, the review and update of the National Implementation Plans, commonly known as the NIPS, of the Stockholm Convention is an obligation that parties have to meet to inform on domestic plans and measures taken to secure the protection of human health and the environment from POPs. Basically, we also know that non-compliance with this obligation poses a serious danger to the availability of information and data needed to assess the effectiveness of the convention to fulfill its overall objective. We know with concern as a youth caucus that still 8 parties have not drawn into NIPS for the original 12 POPs, and furthermore, only 26 NIPS are available for the POPs added at COP 8 in 2017. And the deadline for which was in 2020 and 44 for POPs included at COP 7 in 2050, which is less than 1/4 of all parties. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this side event held on the occasion of the meetings of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions here in Geneva, Switzerland, brings representatives of different sectors together and to create a learning network around issues related to addressing chemicals and waste on promoting youth engagement with different stakeholders in chemicals and waste. Furthermore, active youth participation in the national implementation plan and strategies of the BRS Convention for Sustainable Development is highly needed According to the UN Global Youth Report, the active engagement of youth in sustainable development efforts is central to achieving sustainable, inclusive, and stable societies and to averting the worst threats and challenges to sustainable development, including the impacts of climate change, nature, environment, and pollution, gender inequality, conflict, and migration. Critical to this success, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the 2030 agenda are the role of young people in engaging with local and national governments in delivering on policies and actions on the ground. Therefore, the national and regional efforts are needed to create environments conducive to youth participation, engagement, and development via education, health, employment, and reduce exposure to negative activities. The IPEN Youth Campus hopes to act as a link between decision makers and youth to foster cooperation towards meaningful youth engagement in chemicals and waste, highlighting and conveying outcomes of this side event with policymakers and other stakeholders in across the world, and can help to build an understanding of what intergenerational equity and meaningful participation look like in action, not just in words. It can also help inspire actors to adopt emerging good action and ultimately support ever greater levels of effective youth chemicals and waste advocacy. Such efforts can help to ensure that youth are recognized as powerful agents of change with a central role in achieving a healthy and sustainable future. So as we commence this side event, we would like you to tweet as we go at YP or BRS COPs Youth as it is here. So to just carry on this message. Be reminded that this event is organized by the ACO Foundation, IPEN, Center for International Environmental Law and Young Volunteers for the Environment, the Gambia, in partnership also with the major group of children and youth to the UN Environment. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand over to my co-moderator, Julia, to actually introduce our esteemed speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. And as you see, we're trying to do a slightly different side event where we have two co-moderators, but we're also intervening. And so before giving the floor to our distinguished panelists, I wanted to tell you why it matters to me to be here and to have this side event. The first time I participated in the BRS COPs was 7 years ago when I was an intern. Actually, the first day of my internship at CL was at BRS COPs. And before that, I had the opportunity to also participate in one of the climate change COPs, where there were many events for youth, and there was a meeting before the COP with young delegates and the children and youth that were participating in the COP. And I came here at BRS, and it was amazing to see how members of civil society were collaborating with each other and giving input and participating, and were able to be heard here at BRS COP. However, I didn't see so many people who looked like me at the time, who were students or were young members of NGOs and delegations and UNED. And actually, I kid you not, the last day of the BRS COP in 2015, we had a briefing with the other NGOs sharing our thoughts about how the law negotiations went and what we thought. And my reflection at the time was, where is the youth? Where are young people? Because I felt there was almost nobody like me at the time. And now, 7 years later, I'm actually not an intern anymore. I'm senior in the same organization. But I have some of the similar questions on where youth is, and I'm seeing some improvement. but the question still remains. And of course, that's not something that I share, but with a group of IPEN, the International Pollutant Elimination Network, 2 years ago, right before the pandemic started, we had a meeting all together in Ethiopia, as you might see from this picture, and several other young people had the same concern, seeing that there were not so many young people at the table. And that's how we started this initiative of IPEN Youth Caucus. And because of the pandemic, we were actually able to just kickstart this year. But I'm thanking our colleagues who couldn't be here in person, who made a short video to just share a bit about this initiative. The video has no sound, but you can quickly see what are the IPEN Youth Caucus members or the young people from participating organization of IPEN and what we're trying to do, which is really starting to outreach to inspire youth on IPEN participating organizations to participate, to contribute, to be at the table, and as my co-moderator mentioned, also to coordinate with youth who's participating in other forums, like the Children and Youth Major Group at Geneva Environment Assembly. And this is just the beginning, so we're very much excited to connect and grow and bring more young people also as we age. And with that, I want to actually pass the floor to the first of our distinguished panelists, Jitendra Sharma. Thank you very much for being here with us. He's a program management officer at UNEP, working on the Chemicals and Health branch. And I wanted to start our panel discussion asking you a couple of questions. The first is if you could share what UNEP is doing to support country implementations of NIPS, and what are the challenges, and maybe some of the tips you could share from your experience related to the CHEF project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me back for this important side event. This topic is very interesting and also very important, engaging youth for national implementation plan related activities, which is actually the start of the economy of the nation. And you know that as per Article 7, it's an obligation to the party to the convention that they submit national implementation plans for update their needs. As soon as the new chemicals are listed, those amendments, I come to the challenges later because there are issues with those challenges also. But also these are also related to the Article 15 reporting, which countries have to do every 4 years, and the next reporting is due in August 2022. What we do on NIPS? So, as you know, we are UNEP as an implementing agency. CHEF is a financial mechanism for the Stockholm Convention, and UNEP is an implementing agency, and we support countries in fulfilling this requirement to help them making their NIPS national implementation plans. And we do this through NIP projects. We have a number of NIP global and country-based NIP projects in Basel. But I would mainly focus on the recent activities which we are doing with a global NIP project. We have a new global NIP project which covers 21 countries. And the main focus of this global NIP project is to support countries with the updates of their national implementation plan through a synergistic approach so that the NIPs are of a similar quality. The data collection mechanism is same. The purpose of global NIP is to have synergy and quality information in it, but it also has two components. One is the national component, one is global component. So the global component will provide information on the global perspective of box trade, capacity building, technical assistance to the countries in terms of training programs and all. Second part of the global component is on knowledge management. So we will also be creating a database for online submission of inventory data so that the data is not lost from the NIPs and countries can retrieve the data and can update the data when we do the inventory. The national component mainly focuses on the national inventory and national also include not only inventory but also action plans and needs and gap analysis. So that is something which we have merged these two things. So national component is actually governed by the national governments through our executive agency, and international and the global component is carried out by our partners in UNEP's Chemicals and Health branch and Green Growth Knowledge Platform. The purpose of this global link is also not only to the coordination but also kind of bring different actors together, address the challenges or kind of gaps which we have found. Through our previous projects, we have a lot of learnings from previous projects where things, some things work well, some things do not work well, so we have those lessons. So accordingly, we developed this project. And this 21 countries, after we received approval of this 21 country global link, we also were approached by other countries who could not submit their endorsement letter by the time we required. So we have 11 more countries which will be benefited by this global link project, and that is something which we want to also like kind of link it with the global outputs which will benefit these 11 countries and bring those knowledge. So this is something which we do. The first thing I will mention about the challenges. There are multiple challenges which we have our experience from different projects, and I will also mention about lack of link submission up to the deadline, and I want to start from that part. There are various reasons why there is not kind of fulfilling the timelines for submission of links. Countries are not able to do that because Stockholm Convention is very fast. You have Stockholm Convention amendment, that means listing of new chemicals every 2 years. And the convention obligation is you have to complete your link update 2 years after the amendment enters into force. That means the country has 3 years after this, the decision is made in Stockholm Convention. And if the chemical is listed today, PFHXS, I think by December you will have a report of the COP, and after the report is published, I think it gives 1 year when the decision enters into force. So 3 years is really fast to do a link update because, and here the challenge is by the time you, the officers at country level or the offices at country level or the agencies at country level, by the time there is a new link update requirement is there, they are actually kind of finishing the previous thing, and they are supposed to implement the link update at that time. So they are required to implement the link update, which was done in the previous link update. They are actually doing another link update. That's also a capacity building and practical issue. So this is something which is a challenge, and we have to work together how to do that. And we have kind of managed something in our project that we will not only cover the chemicals which are already listed in the convention, in the global link project, but we will also consider the chemicals which are under process of listing. So in this global link project, we will be actually like at least 2 years or 4 years kind of time by the time we submit this project. So the countries will already have the inventory with the chemicals listed in 2021 COP. So that is something which is one challenge we try to address of covering the chemicals under consideration also, because that gives us a bit of more time to support countries, and then they can also take steps for implementing those priorities. And then there are issues which we have seen from the countries, from our experiences and our discussions with the countries about developing. It's very challenging to develop new inventories. Access to alternatives is a challenge for most of the countries. And then another challenge with most of the new chemicals, most of the people who are aware of Stockholm Convention they know that most of the chemicals which are listed in recent past are mainly used in products and not used as a direct chemical or pesticide. So that chemicals in product is also one of the big challenge. Maintaining import and export data of chemicals in product is not very easy. I have already mentioned about the very fast listing of chemicals in the convention and the requirement and timeline, which is challenging, but countries have to fulfill those requirements. And then of course we have seen there is difference or there are different approaches or kind of different experiences we have with countries where there may be a good political support for finalizing the NIP in one country, but in other country the bureaucratic process may be very long, and that's why it takes a lot of time for validation or endorsement of the NIPs even after the work is finished. So that's on the challenges, and we work very closely with the countries through our executing agencies to work on these challenges, and we have identified these gaps and as well as the steps we have to take in the global NIP from our previous lessons, and we will probably be able to kind of deliver better than we delivered in our previous NIPs. So this is answer to your first part of the question. Yes.
Right, thank you very much, sir. And I think that was a very good reflection from the UN perspective, of course, and we're very happy to hear you mention the new updates coming up, which I think we need to follow as well. So that being said, we also want to hear from the government perspective to share us their own side of the story on how far they've gone and how government have been engaged in the needs as well, and what has really been successful and what are the challenges, and as well as how they've also engaged with young people at the country level. So we will quickly go to the next speaker, who is Mr. Malipa, who is currently the Director of Technical Services Network, working for the National Environment Agency, the Gambia, who is actually leading the Gambian delegation to the BRS COP. We're honored to have you, sir. So the mic is yours. Thank you.
Although there exists a national chemicals management profile developed prior to the formation of the first NIP in 2009, the NIP addressed more and more issues and in greater detail than the chemical management profile. It is prudent to mention that the Gambia does not produce chemicals, but the NIP inventory conducted as part of the development process provides us with significant qualitative and quantitative data on crops, pesticides, NSC on intentionally produced crops and also industrial crops chemicals. facility was extensively used in the Gambia for indoor residual staying for the control of mosquito vectors by the Ministry of Health with the intention to control the spread of malaria. Cotton production was widely practiced in the Gambia, especially in the upper region of the country. The facility was built for the processing of cotton prior to exportation. Cotton production, like any other production, cannot exist without pest-related problems. Therefore, endosulfide was used in those days in the production of cotton to control pests in the country. Over 850 liters of technical endosulfide was discovered at the old cotton production facilities in the country. The Union Toolkit for identification and quantification of unintentional produce costs so that the total emission of 28.4 kg toxic equivalent from sources such as food burning of municipal solid waste, healthcare waste, agricultural waste, industrial combustion, charcoal production, limestone production, and other less significant sources. Despite the significant amount of information gathered, we continue to be limited analytically to confirm data from articles suspended of containing uncontaminated reports. The Gambia therefore continues to be affected through significant deposition of electrical and electronic equipment and waste electrical and electronic equipment, most of which eventually end up in our downsides. In addition, we continue to be affected as a result of low level of awareness on the costs and related risks they pose to human health and the environment. Women and children continue to be the most vulnerable groups to post release due to their immense involvement in the agricultural sector, in domestic activities, small-scale businesses, and others. The human resource capacity for socio-economic assessment in the Gambia is rather limited, and it needs to be improved through the implementation. The participation of youths in the development of NIP was quite significant. A significant number of youths were involved in providing valuable information, mostly from the informal sector. This is evident in the active involvement of youth groups such as Young Volunteers for the Gambia, for the Environment in the Gambia, and the Women Initiative in projects formulated from the private action points driven from the National Implementation Plan. Youth groups from the formal and informal sectors will be involved actively in the upcoming Global Lead project, which the Gambia is a beneficiary. The Global Lead project will, because coincidentally, be participating in full involvement of all sectors with gender and considerations and participations as key drivers of success. It will also consider political, research, social, and economic dimensions in the area. Finally, the Gambia is poised to develop a need for COPs that is responsive to the current realities and tackle problems based on informed scientific information and facts using the principles of utilizing the bad and the bad practices. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much for sharing the experience throughout the Gambia, and also thank you to the previous panelists for sharing the value of your network. I want now to hand over, you would literally have you the controls, to Therese Carlson, who is a science and technical advisor with IPEN, the International Wilderness Elimination Network. And what I want to ask Therese is, how can youth be more involved in science? Give you the floor, Therese. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this event and having me speak here. I'm delighted that I have the possibility to talk about science and youth because these are two issues that are very close to my heart. But before I start, I would like to do a quick age check. So if everyone over here that is 35 years, or that is younger than 35 years, raise their hands. Thank you very much. Regardless of what age you are, I am so grateful that you're here and that you're working to protect human health and the environment. But I would like to talk a little bit more about how can we involve more youth in this process. To give you a little bit of background, I grew up in Sweden, in a small village close to the forest. And I remember having my first environmental campaigns before I was 10. Together with a small group of children, we would join forces, we would go out and we would pick up litter, we would make little paintings that we would sell for different conservation projects, or we would walk around and ask people to recycle. These projects were small, they were modest, and I think it's very easy to look at them as something cute. But I remember the frustration and the fear that I felt. I also remember adults repeatedly telling me that it was up to my generation to fix it. Most of those that told me that were not the same adults that were trying to effect change themselves. And 2.5 decades later, it breaks my heart that the changes that have been made are so far from enough to protect children and youth and future generations from the impacts of toxic chemicals. Instead, the increased production of chemicals and the continuous release of highly persistent chemicals into the environment is shifting more and more of this responsibility not only to the youths of today, but to numerous generations to come. In many ways, it's too late to fully protect today's children from toxic chemicals. Many of these chemicals will pass on to them already before they are born, and will likely affect their health. And young people are growing up knowing that they will have to face these challenges. The consumption choices from millennials and Gen Z, so people born after 1980, are more motivated by sustainability than previous generations. And the youth is mobilizing all over the world to fight for their health and their right to a sustainable future. And I can't speak for all youth. But for me, one of the things that I was most grateful for growing up were the people that led the way. The people that acknowledged that my generation would have to be part of the solution, but at the same time worked hard to do as much as they could to create change. The ones that gave me and my peers a place at the table, and those have also been and continue to be the people that gave me the tools to effect change. Because if we acknowledge that the youth of today will need to be part of the solution, we need to do our best to give them all the tools that we can to do that. I'm turning 35 this year, and will no longer be considered youth by any metric that I'm aware of. And I will do my best to try to follow the example of my mentors and try to give youth a place at the table. And there are many tools that many things that we can do to provide these tools for future generations and today's youth. Regrettable chemical substitutes must be avoided. Stockpiles and waste must be dealt with using environmentally sound management. We must be honest about what works and what doesn't work. This is not the time for false solutions or fantasy techniques such as chemical recycling, which only aggravates the problems. We also need transparency. The legacy is complex by nature, and how are future generations supposed to deal with the growing mountains of waste when they have no idea what chemicals are in that waste? I recognize that there are challenges to inviting all stakeholders to these meetings. There are language barriers, there are financial obstacles, there are maybe also the fact that the work that we're doing here is very technical, and a lot of people outside of this room they don't know the work that is going on under the BRS conventions. But that's why LEAPS is such a good starting point to start involving young stakeholders, because with national work, these barriers are smaller. And one way of doing this is through citizen science. At IPEN, we regularly work with our participating organizations and citizen science to collect data. These are a few recent projects that I've been involved with that have helped us raise the issue of toxic chemicals. And so the first one was together with participating organization Sri Lanka called CJ. We looked at the debris that washed ashore, and people from CJ would go out and collect samples that we then analyzed and accredited them. We could see that the debris was filled with different types of toxic chemicals, which helped us raise awareness on how shipping accidents affect the environment and the complexity of it. And the second and the third one, we had kind of over 23 countries from all over the world collecting samples that we could use that we could analyze. And we could see that toxic chemicals are being recycled back into the market, including brominated flame retardants. We could also show that plastic debris can act as carriers for chemicals that can travel far. And citizen science is also gaining increasing interest within the scientific community overall. Not just because it makes it easier to collect data, but because it increases scientific literacy, it increases awareness, and because through engaging with the communities and with the areas that are affected, it is much easier to make sense of all those numbers in your Excel sheets. I think that young participation in science is increasing overall. Today, young people are even reviewing science articles that are directed towards their peers. This article about persistent organic pollutants in the Arctic was reviewed by a colleague who was then 13 years old. And we all know that there are challenges with the NIPS, including the reporting rates. And I do think that one way of addressing some of the challenges is through involving more youth in the process. I do not mean that we should send out young people to highly contaminated sites to collect samples, but there's a lot of ways that we can involve youth in collecting data. And they are also key in disseminating the work that is being done under BRS, which is something that I've seen in a lot of this that is highlighted as the key aspect. But one key to ensure that youth is involved in the process is to invite them to the table. Because these processes have such direct effects on their lives. So in Article 7, it says that the parties shall cooperate directly or through global, regional, and sub-regional organizations and consult their national stakeholders, including women's groups and groups involved in the health of children. And I don't think it's controversial to say that young people are involved in the health of children. So in summary, I just want to ask everyone to please find spaces where you can involve young people to the table and listen to what they say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Therese Carlson. That was quite emotional, and I think those words really get into the hearts of all participants here. That I'm sure it's a take-home message that we will down in our minds and heart and soul. And I am also actually thinking that all those who are here will definitely champion the possibility of youth inclusiveness in this BRS conventions as well. So I want to thank you once again. And as your child or young person moves forward with their learning and future, it is important that their mental, emotional, social, and physical well-being is developed in a safe, caring, supportive, focused environment. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to introduce to you our next speaker, who has really been involved with the grassroots people, and of course, she's a youth and has really engaged with young people who have complemented the efforts of their organization. Her name is Dorothy Otieno, the projects officer, Zero Plastics and Waste Management Program, under the Center for Environmental Justice and Development, CJAD, which is of course not a new name to the BRS COPs. So, Ms. Dorothy, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe, for the wonderful introduction, of course. And IPEN and other members who have helped organize this side event where the youth get to air their views. And for all of you who are sitting here, who are probably going to listen to what we are saying and probably implement that in your countries and in your organizations, think about how you include youth. That would be very helpful as we lead this side event. So, as I start, I want to introduce the organization, but this has relevance to what I want to pass across. So, Center for Environment Justice and Development is a public interest non-governmental organization that was formed in 2012. We are based in Kenya. So, our mission is sustainable chemicals and waste management for the well-being of the environment, of course, and the public, especially the vulnerable population who are not able to speak for themselves. So, we have different program areas. For example, one on elimination of lead in haze. We have another on elimination of mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining, in dental restoration, and in products. And that works in line with in the Environment Convention. We also have another program which is on elimination of highly hazardous chemicals and works in line with the Rotterdam Convention. And finally, we have another last one which is zero plastics and waste management, which a lot to do with the Basel Convention, the plastic treaty that is being negotiated, starting from November, and Stockholm Convention as well. So the point I'm trying to make here is, I joined the organization about 4 years ago, and this is because of the mission. This is an organization that ideally deals with chemicals and waste. But before then, I can guarantee you that even though I studied environmental science in university, I had a very little mention of the convention. And this was in my last year, thinking about 5 years, 4th year. Just to mention that Basel Convention probably on the hazardous transparent convention and other space. But there wasn't anything taught in practice, so it was just something that existed, but we didn't know how to engage and what to do with that. So as I move forward and I make my point as I go on, then we have questions. She asked, how many here are about 35 and you still push your hands? And my question then is, do we have anyone in this room who's below 25 years old? So if I could see anyone 25 and below, you're sure 25. All right, so I think it's very good to see that we have 25-year-olds in the room and below. And my point is that when we look at spaces such as the climate change, we find very young people participating in those spaces. But when we look at the chemicals and waste management space, we see very few youth participating in this space. So then again, the question is, why is that? Is it because we hear about it few? The few mentions of it, there's very little indulgence into it. Because as we talk about climate change, I heard about it earlier on in the years when I was in primary school and then high school and then campus. But this was also because I took environmental science. So I don't believe there's anyone else maybe doing other courses who who get to hear about this chemicals issues. So as a real case for the youth, why should we include youth? And this is common knowledge because globally the youth constitutes 33% of the total demographic and the majority in general. And then in Kenya, it's not any different. Youth constitute 36% of the total population. Therefore, when we're trying to make any decisions related to chemicals and waste, which the majority are youth and come into contact with, we need to bring them into that space to negotiate for what they believe is good for them. So, what does this really mean? The youth are the majority. So what? So, most of the youth are exposed to chemicals because if all of us today were to use containers that contained BPS, for example, in the entire world, it would be the youth that would be the majority of people who are affected by that BPA that we have all consumed from. And so what then when we consume that? And majority of the youth also will be the heirs of the future generation. So we expect that as much of us are consuming toxic chemicals through products, and so this is going to affect the future generation because those folks will be passed on to our children. Another issue of concern is that, in African countries, for example, a study was done that showed that there were lots of dioxin found in eggs, and this is very alarming because youth eat a lot, of course, if you're a parent, you know this. And so in African countries, the cheapest sources of proteins are actually eggs. So if you're living in an area that is exposed to these dioxins, then a lot of youth then are exposed to these chemicals, and that has a lot to say on how the future generation will look like. But all is not lost because there have been some opportunities that we have participated in, particularly myself. When we look at science policy, which is ideally what the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention among others really trying to pass the message across, that you need science to develop policies. And for you to develop a policy and for you to be science, there has to be research, there has to be data that is collected, and you can participate in the data collection. I echo her words, she said, you should not participate in sampling areas where are highly toxic, but there is opportunity there as well. As you can see, who's behind me there, one of us, another youth working at the Center for Environment, went together to purchase jackets that were supposed to be tested for PFAS. And the black toy that you see there was also another toy that we purchased and was supposed to be tested for chlorinated fuel retardants. And at the left of the screen is that after all this is sampled and it is tested, one of the toys that were tested were found to contain 6,950 parts per gram toxic equivalent quantities per gram, which is a level that is much higher than the concentration observed, for example, in waste incineration ashes, confirming high levels of dioxin in recycled plastics. So I mention this because it is very important for the youth to participate from the very beginning when we collect the data and when we support in analyzing this data and we see the outcome, and so we are able to learn from that process. And that goes also in terms of succession. The people who have come before us, how does that knowledge transfer into the younger people and the younger generation? Another key principle is the circular economy, which has a lot to do with how a product is designed so that it doesn't end up being downsized or as waste, that it maintains itself in the circular economy. And one of the things that I also want to echo from the previous speaker is the transparency by companies to come out and tell us what is in the product, so that even as youth are in this industry of recycling, because majority of the workforce is actually youth, and there's that occupational exposure to chemicals. Therefore, if they are the ones that are doing the recycling, then there has to be transparency in what they're handling, and so that they protect themselves or champion for better production and avoid toxic circular economy. And there's also another aspect where the community, the youth are involved, which is in sustainable waste management. The youth have been very instrumental in training the communities, for instance, how to segregate their waste, because we know mixed waste is very difficult to bring back into the value chain. There's also another aspect where youth have led sensitization, for example, if the waste speakers are really change the conversation in the duty bearers, the inclusion into the waste management system, so that they have policies that will be able to protect the human health and the environment from chemicals and waste. So youth, as you can see from the photo on the farthest left, is waste speakers, the youth, talking to the Cabinet Secretary of Environment, asking them for inclusion in the discussion table. That's the youth. There's an article there in a media paper, meanwhile in Kenya. This is the youth advocating for countries to be mindful and limit on assisted organic politics. On the farthest right, we have a youth there taking photos of good practices and of communities, highlighting not to dump waste in a particular place or not to ban waste in that place. That place used to have a lot of waste being burnt there. So this is him showing the community that this is an area not to dump waste. So therefore, in conclusion, what I want to say, it is evident that despite the challenges, you have played a critical role in the waste management sector, from science to policy, as I have described. However, the participation levels are very low, as we have seen in this room and in the plenary, if you take a bigger lens. So the provisions for more youth engagement offer the following benefits, and there are teaching and learning opportunities. I have just listed here, for example, that this process and engagement in the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention requires a lot of guidance. I sometimes follow your generation, for example, to ask them about the process of the Basel, and I believe that a lot of youth also require that guidance. And about succession and effective transition of knowledge, we see a lot of good arguments and negotiation skills in the plenary, and we want that those skills to be passed along and the knowledge of the youth to be passed along, of the older generation to be passed along to the youth, to be able to negotiate for better policies. Others, youth to be involved in decision making, and even if it's not participating in the BRS COPs in the plenary, can youth be engaged on the national level so that their contribution is then brought onto the table during the plenary discussion of the chemicals and waste management discussions. And finally, our key concern here is that lack of awareness to youth about the chemicals and waste management will lead to them youth coming up with solutions that are not sustainable. For example, if youth are not aware about the impacts of incineration, then the future generation, which is probably youth, is going to propose that they have incineration as a way of managing waste. So there is need for training of many youth about these impacts. And finally, because we are many, meaningful change must start with the youth. So if you want to make a difference, you have to start with the youth who are the majority. And I think I end there and ready for any questions.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for this presentation and for all you shared about Kenya and your work. That concludes our panelist interventions, but we would now want to open the floor for any questions that you might have. So please, we still have some time. Do we have any questions from the floor? We're happy to hear about youth and youth. Thank you so much to the great gentleman over there. Please you have the floor. Can you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Frederick and I'm a project officer at the Center for Environment Justice and Development in Kenya. I have a general question to the panelists. Indeed, it's very important for us to involve the youth. Not only in the implementation of the National Implementation Action Plan, but I would believe that even in the whole negotiation process of these instruments down to implementation. My question is, what specific opportunities do you see that the youth can be involved in this whole process? Practically, how can this be done? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So maybe we can follow the flow with our speakers responding. Unless there's another question, so we can collect another one.
you collect the gentlemen, so we can collect these two, and then.
Thank you very much, the panelists. My question goes to all of you. The theme, as I said, is science to practice, and we understand that the youth between the age of 18 to 24 are mostly people in academic institutions. How can they be engaged to ensure that they can be able to churn out data, even through research or projects at university level that can contribute positively into this process of the links?
Thank you very much. And to relate this question, I think can now go the floor to our panelists. You can please respond to these two questions. Do you want to start? I can start with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can start. I think I have similar answer to both the questions. So I'm sitting here because of my association with NIPS in my previous assignments. I was in the category of youth when IPEN was International COPs Elimination Network, and I actually started my career with a new project in my home country, India. How we associate youth, there are different channels with which you can associate, but I'll tell my own story so that you can connect to how I came from there and now I'm sharing my own experience. So I started my career in the NIC project, first NIC project in India, and I joined as a project assistant. My role was to support the national government in developing inventory content and websites. The engagement of project assistants like us who recently passed our masters was mainly for two aspects. One is doing research, and second is data collection, both are interlinked. And we also were participant in organizing training programs, awareness programs, and all. That had multiple benefits. It kind of like, because I was fresh, I was enthusiastic, and I could kind of connect myself with Stockholm Convention and COPs, because in my curriculum at that time, I never heard of what Stockholm Convention is. I knew Stockholm Conference 1972, but I never knew what Stockholm Convention is. I was not even aware of what COPs is. Like when I was given a presentation on my first day, there was no mention of COPs full form. It was COPs. I had to go to the internet and search what COPs is, and then I could correct. It then, like, because of the field work you have to do on a big project, it kind of grew my interest in this area when I was going to the sites, collecting samples for contaminated sites, and also collecting samples for like finalizing whether it has PCBs or this utility sample or something like that. The interest also grew so much that I continued my PhD on Stockholm Convention related aspects. So there are multiple aspects how you can connect youth. One is definitely involve them in the implementation process through your national partners, which may be NGO, which may be academia, which may be research organization. It gives them amazing platform. It is also a long process. Countries have to submit in 2 years, but students can develop their own interest and continue the research or kind of work in the same area for a longer period through NIC projects or post-NIC projects. There are NIC also results in a lot of post-NIC projects in terms of the implementation plan. So that is another thing. And then also like continue working on it. And that's how I kind of grew myself and kind of tried to gain more experience through the project. And then I was fortunate to get another opportunity when I was posted in the Indian Ministry of Environment, and I used to support them in providing technical advice. And that is how capacity is built in the countries. You learn through a starting process, which is the first enabling activity, and then you grow your experiences and also learn a lot of things. You make mistakes. You are allowed to make mistakes, but you grow. And students should be encouraged to kind of inform them about the path they can achieve through this. I wanted to become a scientist at some point of time when I was doing PhD, but when I was more involved in Stockholm Convention related activities, because my research organization where I did my PhD was also a regional center to the Stockholm Convention. So it is also about personal interest. But even if you are a scientist, you can contribute to the process of national implementation plan, to helping them in terms of analysis, in terms of data collection, inventory. So this is a personal experience. I thought if I share a personal experience rather than a normal kind of presentation of few bullet points, I think it would make more sense. And this is something which I would like to encourage other countries when they do national implementation plan, involve students, bachelor students or master students. I will probably, if you involve like 10 students, maybe 3 will continue to work in this field. And that's a great aspect of such kind of projects, that you build national capacities which can kind of help your country in long term, helping you. You will need national capacity as well as expertise. When you come for COPs, you need to prepare a country position. For making a country position, a bureaucrat requires a technical support who can like analyze the documents posted on the Stockholm Convention website. A bureaucrat is a decision maker and not a technical person normally. So this kind of capacity can be built by projects, provide enough opportunity in terms of data collection and all, and link it with your national projects and related projects which you are doing on pollution, on hazardous waste, or hazardous chemicals. It's very useful, and like I am a beneficiary of such process, and I would kind of suggest wherever possible involve students in those activities. You can also involve students in awareness related activities who are directly not involved in this, but they can pass on the message to a larger section of the community, and also at different levels. They are very active on social media. We have to use all those platforms to kind of raise awareness. So, and that is what we are also doing in one of our big projects, which is IPEN program, in which we have a whole youth program in which we will be using a lot of students for sensitizing communities for plastic waste management through Tide Turner's Plastic Challenge, which mainly encourages students, school students, from 6 to 18 normally, but older students can also join in taking actions and inspiring your colleagues and community to first to make them aware about what plastic is, what plastic waste is, and how it can be managed and how we can minimize. So this is something which are all interlinked. So IPEN program is also kind of, I link it to IPEN program not only to like inform about it, but also these programs are actually outcome of what are the priorities set up by the links. So that's why I interlink the link priorities with post-link projects where the students can benefit from one project to another project and transition themselves from like one step to the other one, where like first phase is learning and getting data, and second step you help countries in implementing those action plans which are identified earlier. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you also the representative from the Gambia who wants to add, please?
Thank you very much, my previous speaker, as he said. Like for example, in the Gambia, over 60% of the population are youths. So the way you can connect the youth into this NIP implementation is that there are many ways. Like in the case of the Gambia, for example, the University of the Gambia, we have a full-fledged research center or research where we have certain inventories that are to be taken. Sometimes we involve these youth basically, youths are not left out in most of these activities, in both capacity building programs and also in areas of sensitizations. They are deeply involved in all these activities. So this is the way you can connect them in this aspect so that they become part and also of what exactly it takes to understand about chemicals. And this will help them develop a kind of a career and get them involved in the entire process. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with the previous speakers. There's a lot of very practical ways of moving forward to include more youth. But I also want to recognize that youth is an incredibly diverse group of people. So I really do think that one of the steps forward is to ask them how they want to be involved, how they can be involved, because they have so many capacities, so much knowledge. And when it comes to young academics, just a reflection from my experience, I know that when I was working in academia, I really wanted to contribute to policy processes, but I didn't really know how. So whenever possible, whenever you're working on a topic that you think would benefit from academic input, academic knowledge, I would say reach out to people that are working in that area. And maybe try to encourage them to bring their whole team so that we also get the young academics to join those discussions.
Thank you so much for your answers. And do we have any other question from the floor? Yes, I see one over there, and I also received one online. So please, if you can also introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the youth panelists. So I'm Senior Abi from IPEN, Tunisia. I have 25 years, not old, but dealing with youth as educator and in environmental science. I'm really interested about your thoughts since we are in this umbrella of the BRS synergies. The parties here are deciding for you, for your future. So how, and having the, I'm highlighting the needs that you know about the process. So what are your thoughts about the process here? Are you happy? So, since they are delivering hundreds and thousands of reports for you, so what is your position about that? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samian. And before giving the floor to our panelists, I'll collect another from the floor and one online. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Joan Sambia. I'm from Namibia. I actually work for the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. I sensed from some of the speeches that were made earlier that there seemed to be very little information about this international environmental treaty among the youth. And so I'm here by advising that maybe during the curriculum review of the universities, maybe it's vital that they include a component that talks to international treaties so that you are introduced to the conventions quite early and maybe the interest will grow from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for also this intervention and comment. And before I give the floor to some final remarks to the speakers answering this question, we also received one on WhatsApp, so we're reachable everywhere during this event. And the question we received from Mrs. Sarah Garvey is related to the intervention of Dorothy, because there's so much interest in plastic from young people, and so the fact that you mentioned plastic and showed extreme representation gave input to a question that was, do you think we can achieve a zero plastic approach all over the world, and how long can it take? So this is also a question we got from the youth online. Possibly challenging answer, so I'll reopen the floor to the speakers if they want to address these questions or any of them, please. I don't know if I can reboot any of you on the spot, maybe, or one of you wants to start. Please.
I can start, and I'll try to address all the questions, or at least parts of the questions. So regarding thoughts on processes, the work that I've most been involved with under BRS is the Stockholm Convention, and I think that we're seeing that several chemicals are being substituted by other toxic chemicals. So I think in order to increase the efficiency of these approaches, we need to have more class-based approaches. There are already class-based approaches, but I think we need to have more of it. Regarding including more education about BRS in schools and universities, I think that would be great. And for the plastics, I will leave most of that to Dorothy, but I also want to raise that there are plastics that are useful, but today we have no idea what kind of chemicals are in the plastics that we're using. And that lack of transparency is a big issue when it comes to sustainability work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions as well. I'll try to answer them in the best way possible. So, Sena's question was very interesting about the hundreds of reports that are being generated and useful in this convention, and how do we feel when decisions are being made plenary and for us. And I think the feeling is left out mostly, because even during, okay, I'm lucky that in our country, for example, Kenya, we were involved, I was personally involved during the process of developing the Kenyan positions. But I want to believe that this is not a privilege for most youth in most countries. And so, in that case, speaking of before my participation, I used to feel left out, because these decisions are going to affect us in the near future, and we are not included. So then the call to governments is, even as you go through the thousands and thousands or hundreds of reports, the technical guidance, please involve it, even though they might not have a direct input into the technical aspects of it, because maybe they don't understand it very well. That is the learning process for the youth. So do not leave them out because of maybe the idea that they could not know what is being discussed. But this is an avenue for them to get that understanding. So I think that to urge governments to please feel the need to include the youth in this participation and development decisions. And in terms of a zero plastics approach and how long that will take, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an aspiration. We aspire to have a zero plastic station or a continent. So how long that will take is not predictable, because we have different players here and there. We have producers, we have what they want to gain out of it, and then so there's a lot of push and pull. We cannot, I personally cannot tell you when this will happen, but we hope that even with this discussion that involves every stakeholder, there will be an understanding, and like Teresa has said, for those plastics that are useful, that chemicals are not added into it, and that it maintains the circular economy, that it does not end up as waste somewhere, and the impacts are not toxic, and the youth will not suffer the impacts of using these materials. So I think that would be my intervention.
Thank you very much. I think our speakers deserve a round of applause for intervening and responding, please. Thank you so very much for your response. Can we just give them a round of applause? Just to run a reflection of all the comments, the questions, of course, the response. I just want to also draw your attention back to the MDGs. During the MDGs, we were quite so very young at the time, and we also noticed that a lot of false narrative around the success of the MDGs was out there, and at some point the world was actually on pause. So many people did not have hope again on decision makers, but it was also the young people that actually injected that energy of vibrance, energy of hope, and took upon themselves the SDGs that came into force in 2015, and you can see the vibrancy also at the COP21 in Paris for the Paris Agreement as well. So you can see how the young people brought the world alive again, and that leads me to that the future of youth is now and not tomorrow, and it is our responsibilities as youth to hand over to the next generation. And of course, young people today are coming to age in a world faced by crisis that we are all cognizant about. And even before the COVID-19 pandemic, devastated lives also and livelihoods around the world. The socioeconomic systems of the past have put the livability of the world at risk and eroded the pathway to healthy, happy, fulfilled lives for too many young people and children. So basically, the next generation are the most important and the most affected as stakeholders when talking about our global future. And we owe them basically more than this. And the year 2022, on this post-COVID era, is the time to start thinking and acting long-term to make intergenerational parity the norm and to design a society, economy, and world that cares for all people. So with that, I would love to introduce one of the IPEN experts who had a need at heart and also has supported also the youth campus. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Vito to give us the closing remarks, and then later we will also have one of our colleagues to give the takeaway messages that will serve as food for thought for a reflection as we enter through other side events and session of the BRS. Mr. Vito, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for the panel. That turned out to be extremely interesting. I also teach in a university for undergraduate students, so most of my students are under 24, so quite young. And I think what I see is that when I talk to them about international law and, well, actually, when I talk to them about any law, they seem to be not knowing really how they can participate. And to be clear, they're all. I teach in a science department, so it's quite interesting to see how that can spark their interest. To be clear, I am not a part of the youth caucus, as you can see from my hair color, but I did start to work on chemicals when I was in my 20s. And I was not drawn in, and maybe similarly to Mr. Sharma, I was not drawn in by the desire, like Fridays for Future, for climate change, to change the world through participating in chemicals policy, but it was really through a process, let's say similar to the NIPS. So if we started from NIPS, and you highlighted how that can be a tool for starting the participation, but we also heard other ways in which we can get involved in these policies. And I think, one way is like what Perez was pointing out, science is a very powerful tool. We are discussing chemicals that have a harm that is often invisible to us, and it's very difficult to become passionate about persistent organic pollutants. As you said before, you had to Google what it meant, and I admit that at some point in my life I have done that too. So science is one, but then we also have other tools, and because like these international conventions are also legal obligations, and also because I am a lawyer, I want to point out that we also have tools that there are international agreements that kind of push for more participation in the decision-making process, and do that in the perspective of having a better environment for future generations. And probably what we don't do enough is to realizing the potentials of those agreements and make the future generation and the youngsters participate the most. So I would want to say that without going into the technicalities, because we heard that this is difficult. There's a lot of lack of resources. There's need for resources to support capacity building. There's a need for tools to remove those barriers to participation. I think Mr. Ba's intervention was illuminating. The Stockholm Convention was agreed in 2001, probably by those people that learned in the 60s about the harm of DDT. And still now we are having problems with DDT after 18 years from the entry into force of that convention. So that is also probably a barrier on how disconnected we are between the reality of the legacy of the problems and how difficult those future problems that we have to face, as Teresa said, like those substitutes that seem to be as toxic as the ones that we want to eliminate. So I just want to finish to say that, these agreements are made for future generations, but we cannot blame the future generations not to participate. We need to create those conditions to have them here and invite them at the table. When I grew up, there was a song that I used to listen in Italy, and the tagline was like, "Freedom is participation," and so without participation, there's no freedom. Thank you, and I will leave it to the last speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter from IPEN, for these reflections. And because this event is about youth, we wanted actually to have a recap of the main takeaways from somebody who's here as the first COP as an intern with the Seattle Center for International Environmental Law. And so we'd like to give the floor to Lumana, who's interning with us, for the takeaways from this event and how we move forward. Thank you.
So good afternoon. So I'm 23. I would not say that usually, but I think it's important today. So I will just give you the key takeaways of this event. So BRS Convention share the common objective of protecting human health and the environment from hazardous chemicals and wastes. To that effect, needs and NAS are the first steps in defining a country's needs and ensuring their implementations, and bringing together a range of stakeholders, which has to include the youth. Exposure to unsafe or environmental hazards may have lifelong, irreversible, and even transgenerational consequences. It affects the youth's rights to life, to health, to a healthy environment, to development, to food security, to clean drinking water and sanitation, and to an adequate standard of living, among others. While the parties gather here to try to make the world a safer place for current and future generation, we see limited youth in the participants. The youth is an agent of change in the environment and the BRS Convention's issues and context. The youth will be the succession, the policymakers, the NGOs, the industries, and the international organizations of tomorrow. It is a question of legacy to which it must be responded by making sure the youth has access to information, education, conclude by saying that legacy is here about making sure to develop youth awareness and participation in science and in policy making, making sure that they know enough to make the good decisions of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou, who is the rapporteur for this session. And we have now come to the end of the side event. But first, I would like us to clap for ourselves for giving us the patience and the support. Yes, so we are rounding up, and now we will solicit a request from the Gambia delegation to champion this conversation and discussion of youth participation and engagement, to be able to discuss with other parties and share such action call that we are demanding to be champion of the youth movement here. If you can champion that on our behalf as we further this conversation online, and of course the gentleman from UNEP as well, to also convey this message, and we would love to see in the next BRS parties and the UN agencies put in reference of the importance of youth engagement and participation in the BRS respective spaces. So we'll be happy if the government of the Gambia and of course the union to champion this. Is that okay? Alright, so distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I was your moderator. My co-moderator is Julia from SEAL, and we would like to thank you so very much for sharing your time with us, and we look forward to joining and continue the conversation online. Thank you, merci, Jarama, and thank you, bravo.